Modernity revolts against the normalizing functions of tradition. This is a quote from Jürgen Habermas, a German philosopher and social theorist. It speaks to the idea that modernity rejects traditional values and ways of thinking in favour of a new and more innovative way of being and creating. Modernity in film is always evolving and changing, but there are some clear pioneers, such as Jean-Luc Godard, David Lynch, and Darren Aronofsky, who pushed modernity into the cinematic sphere through their use of non-linear storytelling, fragmented narratives, and unresolved storylines. Two films that deal with these themes in striking ways are Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream and Mother. Both films paint a bleak image of modern existence, where the search for purpose and meaning doesn't lead to any form of transcendence, but pure destruction. In this video essay, we will explore how both films interact with existentialist thought patterns to highlight the issue of identity and alienation, and how they focus on the dislocation of modern life. To truly understand the way that Aronofsky's work represents alienation, we must look at existentialist philosophy, which is the idea that modern existence often leads to an experience of meaninglessness and isolation. There are key existentialists who explored how individuals are left to create their own meanings in a world full of indifference and chaos, such as Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and Friedrich Nietzsche. Sartre argued that existence precedes essence, which means that humans are born without inherent purpose and must create meaning for themselves. Camus, on the other hand, focused on the absurd, the tension between our search for meaning and the universe's unpredictability. Nietzsche warned that modernity's structures could trap us in endless cycles of alienation, which led to nihilism. Requiem for a Dream is a perfect example to use when exploring these existential themes of alienation. The film is set in New York and has 4 different protagonists: Sarah, Harry, Marion, and Tyrone. We follow them as they each chase after their own personal illusions of connection and success, but as their individual addictions spiral out of control, their identities end up fractured and they are destroyed by the same desires they thought would provide them purpose. Aronofsky does not just portray addiction, he uses it as a metaphor for the alienation and identity loss at the heart of modern capitalism. Sarah struggles with her addiction to amphetamines and the fantasy of losing weight, being admired and appearing on TV. Harry is addicted to heroin and the dream of quick wealth, Marion to heroin and love and validation, and Tyrone to heroin and escaping his past and guilt related to his mother. The fast-paced split-screen editing and rapid montages that Aronofsky uses create a complete sensory overload and put the audience into the same overwhelming feeling of alienation. This film is a wonderful example of haptic visuality, penned by Laura U. Marks, which is when the viewer feels alienation physically through editing styles and visual cues used in the piece of media. Mother, which Aronofsky made 17 years after Requiem for a Dream, still manages to take existential alienation to an even more cosmic level. The film follows an unnamed protagonist called Mother, who experiences severe isolation and trauma when her home becomes the battleground for scary intruders and eventually total destruction. This film is based on biblical and ecological themes, but ultimately is a tense study in alienation, a topic which Aronofsky seems to thrive off. Mother's identity becomes completely and utterly eroded as her home and needs are exploited by others. Aronofsky makes sure to use tight, claustrophobic framing to align with her suffocating experiences and forces us to really feel her existential crisis. This goes hand in hand with Sartre's theory of the look, which highlights the way that we are objectified through others' gaze, completely losing our sense of self in this process. Her desperate struggles mirror the eternal repetition of Nietzsche's philosophy, where existence seems condemned to repeat itself endlessly. No matter what Mother does, she will not be able to escape the traumatic cycle of violence and renewal that shows modernity's failure to offer any real form of transcendence. Throughout both films, Aronofsky refuses to offer any solution to the existential dilemmas his characters face. Instead, he uses intense cinematic techniques to fully immerse us in their despair. He puts a focus on sensory overload, fragmented narratives, and severe alienation. He doesn't just show us identity loss, he forces us to experience it. There is no redemption in his work, only the brutal reality of existence. Overall, both of these amazingly made films highlight the overwhelming alienation and identity loss that is experienced through modern existence. They reflect existentialist thought patterns in their themes, form, and structure, and instead of providing any answers, Aronofsky plunges us into the core of alienation itself, forcing us to confront our own existential isolation. Watching these films is an intense and wild ride, but they will both leave you asking the same question. How do we possibly navigate a search for identity and transcendence in a modern world that refuses to offer either? Thank you for watching.